Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to bring you the next installment in my ongoing series of videos all about the 90s PBS Kids TV show, Wishbone. In case you've never seen a Wishbone episode before, it was a half-hour television show directed at children, and each episode was divided into two different storylines. The first storyline was always an adaptation of a work within the literary canon. Most frequently that was a book, but it could also be a short story, a play, a myth, a legend, a folktale, anything along those lines. And then in the second storyline, we followed a family living in Texas with their pet Jack Russell Terrier Wishbone, and their modern, aka 1990s storyline always related thematically back to that literary adaptation. In this series of videos I do here on my channel, I look at one episode of Wishbone per video, and I compare it against the source material that they decided to take on in that episode. And then comes the fun part. I start asking some questions. What did they change from that source material? What did they keep the same? Why do I think they may have made some of those choices? Were they faithful enough to the source material to give the viewer a good sense of what that literary work is all about? Did they pull any kind of moral message from that literary work to communicate to the young audience at home? And most importantly, was it an entertaining episode to watch? In today's video, we will be looking at a mid-season 2 episode of Wishbone titled War of the Noses. It's a take on Robert Louis Stevenson's adventure novel, The Black Arrow. Let's take a look. What's the story, Wishbone?
What's the story, Wishbone? What's this you're dreaming of?
At the start of this episode, Wishbone's owner Joe and his mom Ellen trick Wishbone into thinking they're just going for a car ride, but they're actually taking him to the vet for his annual checkup. They're running a little late, so Ellen asks their neighbor Wanda if she can let the upholsterer into their house while they're gone. Wishbone is pouting in the back seat, feeling betrayed, and in that emotional state, he introduces the novel, The Black Arrow, which is set during England's 15th century War of the Roses, a civil war between the houses of York and Lancaster for control of the throne. Wishbone plays Richard Shelton, the young ward of Sir Daniel Brackley, a cruel man known for frequently changing his alliances. Sir Daniel has a group of enemies that collectively go under the name of the Black Arrow. They all want to see Sir Daniel dead for stealing their land, and they also accuse him of being responsible for the death of Richard Shelton's father. When Richard is out walking, he meets a teenage boy named John Matcham and helps him out of an unfortunate situation. John claims to also be under the guardianship of Sir Daniel, but he was kidnapped because Sir Daniel has plans to benefit from arranging his marriage. Matcham is on the run, so when Sir Daniel's men show up looking for him, he begs Shelton to hide with him. But before they can be discovered, the men of the Black Arrow launch an attack. Dick Shelton trusts Sir Daniel, and he knows those men under attack, so he wants to join in, but John steals his dagger to prevent it and tells Dick that Sir Daniel killed Richard Shelton's father. One of Sir Daniel's men breaks free of the fight and captures the fugitive Matcham, leading him away. Ellen, Joe, and Wishbone are on their way to the vet back in the Texas storyline. Wanda lets in the upholsterer like she was asked, but instead of leading him to the chair that Ellen has clearly indicated is the one to be worked on, Wanda instead has him take Wishbone's iconic, beloved red chair. When Wishbone sees it in the upholsterer's truck, he rightly freaks out and chases after it. Joe follows after, trying to find him, and is shadowed by a young boy named Jimmy, who will not stop talking about his dad. Back at the moat house, Dick Shelton confronts Sir Daniel about his participation in his father's death, but Sir Daniel shuts him down. Dick is very confused about whether his loyalties are with the right person and is wondering who he can trust when John Matcham arrives at his door, saying Sir Daniel intends to dispose of Richard just like he did his father. John, or should I say Joanna, since Joanna has been a girl this entire time, suggests Richard escape out of the window. Before he leaves, he declares his love for Joanna and promises to marry her before she lowers him out of the window. He very narrowly escapes. In pursuit of the red chair, Wishbone gets trapped inside of a phone booth where he's discovered by Ellen. They take him to the vet where he puts up a fight, but not for the normal dog-hating the vet reasons. He still desperately wants to get back to his chair, but he gets his exam and takes getting his shot like a champ. After his escape, Richard Shelton wakes up under the care of the leader of the Black Arrow Brotherhood, Ellis Duckworth, who cares for him because the entire group loved his father. Duckworth confirms that Sir Daniel killed Richard's father and invites him to join in on their collective mission to get revenge, especially since Richard could save his love Joanna at the exact same time. But Richard doesn't want to wait to rescue Joanna, so he declines that offer and heads back to the moat house. Along the way, he meets Lord Foxham, Joanna's real guardian. Richard agrees to fight alongside them to free Joanna, and Foxham grants him permission to marry her. The fight begins, and Richard and Joanna are able to escape into the forest, where they encounter Sir Daniel. Richard decides graciously to spare his life, but Sir Daniel very shortly after is pierced in the back by a black arrow launched by none other than Ellis Duckworth. Their revenge is complete, and so Duckworth disbands the Black Arrow Brotherhood right then and there. Back in the real-life adaptation, after the vet visit, Wishbone sees the Doberman who had been riding in the car carrying his red chair, so he races outside. Joe and Ellen immediately see why he had been acting up and promise to sort out the mix-up. So let's talk about this episode, and since The Black Arrow is a story set during a very specific time period, and the War of the Roses, a real-life historical event, has a lot to do with how this story plays out, this was an episode in which some historical context was absolutely necessary, and I think the writers did a pretty decent job of laying that foundation before launching into telling this story, which is also quite complex, because there are a lot of characters, there's a lot going on, so there was a lot to summarize, and I think they did it pretty well. Of course, things are highly condensed in this episode, where they're much more complex in the novel, just kind of by necessity. There's only so much time in the episode. For instance, the Black Arrow in the novel, that brotherhood, they actually had 4 targets. Sir Daniel was their number one priority for sure, but they had 3 other targets, 3 other men who did Sir Daniel's bidding, one of whom gets killed immediately in the novel. That's actually how the Black Arrow Brotherhood is introduced in the book. The development of the friendship and then the romance between Joanna and Dick happens a lot more gradually and a lot more naturally in the book. And also the way that Joanna's gender is revealed happens a lot differently in the book. There are a lot more escapades in the novel, a lot more characters. The most notable one that they left out, I was actually really surprised that it wasn't in this adaptation, was the future King Richard III, who actually knights Dick at one point in the novel for his help in battle. It's a pretty important scene. But what we also lose from the novel are the moments of Dick slowly realizing the error of his ways and his change of heart, which happens right at the end of the novel. Many lives were lost in this book, in this story, because of Dick's youth and naivete, and he realizes that by the end of the book. That is the reason why he spares Sir Daniel's life when he had the opportunity to take revenge for Sir Daniel killing his father. He realized that he didn't want to do that at the end of the novel. He had grown. But instead of using that very clear moral message, it is the moral message of the book, instead the writers of Wishbone decided to go with this theme of losing something loved, and then they mirror that in the real life storyline with Wishbone losing his loved red chair. Wishbone is trying to save his red chair. Richard is trying to save Joanna. I understand what they were going for, but I can tell you I do not love a woman being compared to an object. This is an older novel, and I know that effectively Richard is trying to win Joanna back, but never once as I was reading this book did I feel as though Robert Louis Stevenson was objectifying Joanna. You feel throughout that Richard has fallen in love with who Joanna is, and he wants to save her because he understands now who Sir Daniel is. So it's not that he's trying to win an object back, he's trying to save the woman he loves. But in this episode, by comparing Joanna to a chair, this episode is objectifying her. So where do we stand with this episode? Well, first of all, I think an important chunk of the story of the Black Arrow was left out of this episode. I think the moral message was very weak, to put it lightly, and they totally missed an opportunity to actually grab at the real moral message of the Black Arrow. And then the link between the real life storyline and the book adaptation is tenuous at best. Although this was a fairly entertaining episode, what with Wishbone alternately scaling walls and chasing down trucks, I can't say this was a very successful episode. But those were my thoughts on this episode of Wishbone. I would love to hear yours in the comment section below. And if you would like to see more of these What's the Story Wishbone videos that I do, if you have a favorite episode that you're looking to see if I've covered, or if you just want to watch them all from the very beginning, I have created a playlist that contains all the ones I've done up to this point. It will contain all the ones I do in the future. I'm planning to cover all of them, so be sure to check out that playlist in the description box below and up in the cards. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Funding for Wishbone provided by annual financial support from PBS viewers like you.